When it comes to the oil industry, when it comes to generating wealth, there is one name that stands above all: John D. Rockefeller. Many people think that Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, these guys are the richest in history. But John D. Rockefeller amassed a fortune that was worth all of these guys' wealth combined. How? Through building a $1 trillion oil empire in Standard Oil. See, in 1859, America's first oil well was established. By the early 1860s, the oil industry was booming. But Rockefeller was smart. Instead of trying to drill up the oil like every man and his dog was trying to do, he established something called an oil refinery. As Rockefeller famously quoted, "If you want to succeed, you should strike out on new paths, rather than travel the worn paths of accepted success." So he would get the leftover oil and transform it into more useful products like lubricants, paraffin wax, paints, and other valuable items. Now, the money coming in from this oil refinery started looking very good. So he did what every good entrepreneur does once they find a success in something. He built another oil refinery. Very soon he would own the world's largest refinery business and have multiple buildings throughout the Cleveland area. At the end of the day, it was just a very profitable industry to be in. But of course, when the mice see the cheese around, they come sniffing. When other people see how much money oil refiners are making, they want a piece of that pie. So many started building up their own oil refinery business in the hope of making money. Rockefeller wasn't too happy about this. He wanted to dominate the entire industry. So he went like a shark throughout the country, buying up any oil refineries that he could get his hands on. He moved so fast that within 2 years, the majority of Cleveland's refineries belonged to Standard Oil, his company. But some competitors refused his offers and kept up their business. Now Rockefeller resorted to other tactics to get them to sell. He would buy up all the oil barrels to cause a shortage that crippled the smaller companies. He would keep the prices of his products so low that even he would make a loss. This way, all customers would come to buy his products and not the competitors. Eventually, the competition just did not have the finances to keep up with Rockefeller's Standard Oil. They gave in and got bought out by his now growing empire. Now, a lot of people during this time, they did not agree with the way Rockefeller was buying out all of these businesses. He saw it in a different way. He thought by buying out these weaker, underperforming refineries, he was doing them a favor because they did not have the right processes to compete. This way, the whole of America would benefit because he would improve their processes, waste less money, and therefore give consumers a cheaper product. Some of the smaller businesses didn't thank him, but most of America were pretty happy with the cheap product he was delivering. Through Rockefeller's Standard Oil, kerosene had become cheap enough to be used in close to every home. Lighting up their home at night was no longer an issue. And because Rockefeller was just so skilled at business and making processes efficient, Standard Oil was doing well. They now had control of 90% of the domestic oil market, and they gave employment to over 100,000 Americans. Standard Oil became an extremely powerful company, and a lot were arguing too powerful. The firm was attacked by journalists and politicians for having a monopoly on the oil industry, and the New York World went as far as saying that Standard Oil was the most cruel, impudent, pitiless, and grasping monopoly that ever fastened upon a country. To these critics, Rockefeller replied, "In a business so large as ours, some things are likely to be done which we cannot approve. We correct them as soon as they come to our knowledge." And it was around this time where Rockefeller started to merge his oil companies into one big empire. You see, during this time, the way things were set up, you had to make a separate company for every state that you operate in. Rockefeller, he got his team of lawyers together and he created an innovative form of corporation to centralize their holdings, giving birth to the Standard Oil Trust. This trust had all 41 companies underneath it, and Rockefeller now had his oil empire in one centralized place. It had become the richest, biggest, and most feared business in the world, seemingly immune to the boom and bust of the business cycle. It was consistently making profits year after year. Rockefeller's empire, it now included 20,000 domestic wells, 4,000 miles of pipeline, and 5,000 tank cars. And if Standard Oil existed today, it would be worth over $1 trillion, making it the richest company on Earth and Rockefeller the richest man on Earth, with a net worth of $400 billion. But Rockefeller was always a man with a big vision, a big dream. He wanted to expand into iron ore and ore transportation. This forced a collision with the Steel King, Andrew Carnegie. This became the talk of the nation, scattered throughout the newspapers and people's lips. Who would win? Rockefeller began by buying a set of mines. Now, these set of mines, the iron ore in them was known to dust up clogs of the furnaces. So Andrew Carnegie was not worried. However, soon manufacturers figured out how to use the iron ore, and Rockefeller began supplying it to Carnegie's competitors at rock bottom prices. Then Rockefeller started planning to build a new steel plant to rival Carnegie's. Carnegie was now beginning to feel really threatened, and eventually he made the decision to buy all of Rockefeller's steel in return for his exit from the industry for good. Rockefeller agreed, and he made a lot of money. But this was to be the height of what his empire would reach. Rockefeller knew that if he got too big, too powerful, the public would come for him and his business. As he put it, we realized that public sentiment would be against us if we actually refined all of the oil. And because the company was so big, it was being increasingly attacked more and more. Critics claimed that Rockefeller's empire consolidated wealth and power in the hands of a corporate tycoon. They claimed it did not leave enough opportunity for the ordinary businessman. One of the most effective critics on Rockefeller and his firm was a lady called Ida Taubell. She documented the company's espionage, price wars, and heavy-handed marketing tactics in a publication called The History of the Standard Oil Company. This publication grew very popular amongst the people. Public sentiment towards the company was now growing worse and worse. And eventually they got taken to the Supreme Court, where it was ruled that Standard Oil Company of New Jersey was in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The court ruled that the trust originated in illegal monopoly practices and ordered it to be broken up into 34 new companies. And some of you will know these companies today: Chevron, Exxon, Mobil, Conoco, Amoco, which is now part of BP. These are some of the spin-offs from Standard Oil, which in themselves are still massive companies in this day and age. Interestingly enough, this split off into 34 different companies actually increased Rockefeller's wealth. The company's combined net worth rose fivefold, and Rockefeller's personal wealth jumped to all-time highs. And this is the interesting thing about Rockefeller. Although he had many a critic, he was able to do something very special in my point of view. And that is do an amazing service to Americans and make a lot of money at the same time. You see, back when Rockefeller was alive, people needed kerosene to light up their houses at night. A lot could not afford this. But because of Rockefeller's efforts, kerosene became so cheap that nearly every household could buy it and access light. Also, when Rockefeller first started his business, the people digging for oil would dump their leftover extracts into lakes and rivers. Rockefeller, through his oil refinery, would take these extracts, normally destroying the earth, and make them into useful products. And not to mention, he was employing tens to hundreds of thousands of Americans in his time. He was adding value to the world and at the same time making money. At the end of the day, there is no denying that Rockefeller was a great man. He had many a critic, and you always will when you build a trillion-dollar company. But making kerosene affordable to the poor class, using the oil, which is normally dumped into rivers, and making it a useful product, as well as giving away more than half of your wealth, is surely something to aspire to for all businessmen.